Isn't it fascinating how for so long the mind clung to comparisons, measuring, weighing, judging, when in reality none of it was ever real? Because who told you that someone else's success made you less successful? Who decided someone being taller, stronger, fitter, wealthier had anything to do with your worth? When you really think about it, isn't it strange how you just assumed it was true? But what is? Was it just an illusion? A trick of the mind? A program running in the background that was never truly yours to begin with? And now as you take a deep breath, as you feel something shifting, as you recognise those comparisons that were never necessary, something becomes clear. The moment you stop seeing yourself as less than anyone, the moment you stop seeing yourself as more than anyone, the moment you stop measuring the comparison, the struggle to be enough, that's the moment you become free. Because when you stop trying to be better than, or fearing that you're worse than, you suddenly realise you're always enough. That everyone is just human, flawed, imperfect, beautiful, just like you. When you see that, truly see that, what happens? Do you feel lighter? Do you feel freer? Do you feel something inside you releasing, unlocking, awakening? Because now, instead of standing in someone else's shadow, or trying to cast one of your own, you just stand, firm, grounded, present. As you breathe into this knowing, as you feel the truth of it settling deeper into your being, you realise something even more powerful. All those old beliefs, the rules, the limits, the walls you built around yourself, they're never keeping you safe. They're only keeping you small. And wasn't it exhausting? Always trying to hold everything together, trying to control, suppress, manage, avoid. Never letting yourself truly feel. Because feeling meant risk. And risk meant what? What exactly were you afraid of? Rejection? Judgment? Being laughed at? And even if that happened, what then? Would you actually break? Would it actually mean anything? Or could you just let it pass, let it roll off you, knowing you're so much more than any single moment, any single opinion, any single reaction? When you recognise this, something changes, something profound. Because suddenly, you're not holding on so tightly. Suddenly, you don't need to prove anything. Suddenly, you just are. And in that space, in that freedom, in that knowing, that's where power lies. Because now, you don't just know you're enough, you feel it. And when you feel it, when you own it, when you radiate it, the world responds. Because people, they don't remember what you say. They remember how you make them feel. And now, knowing what you know, how do you want to make people feel? Because when you step into your presence, your power, your truth, unshaken, unafraid, unapologetically you become unstoppable. Not because you're trying, not because you need to prove anything, but because you finally remember who you are all along. Isn't that exciting? Because it's interesting how the mind creates stories. Stories about who we should be. Stories about what's acceptable. Stories about what must be hidden, suppressed or denied. And when you really stop and think about it, or better yet, when you stop thinking and just feel it, where did those stories come from? Was there a moment, a voice, a look? Someone, somewhere, telling you that to be vulnerable was to be weak, that to feel was to be exposed, that to hesitate, to doubt, to falter was to fail. Isn't it funny how those rules, those expectations, those invisible walls, they weren't even yours to begin with. So why were you carrying them? And what happens when you put them down? Because the truth is, there's no one way to be strong. There's no single way to be confident. And if you spent years building walls, armouring up, suppressing and shutting down, was it working? Or was it exhausting? Because the more you suppress, the more pressure builds. The more you try to control, the more chaos you create. The more you think, race ahead, analyse every possibility, the more disconnected you become from the only thing that ever truly mattered, the present moment. And as you realise that now, you might find yourself breathing differently, slower, easier, deeper. Because for the first time, you're not running. For the first time, you're not fighting yourself. For the first time, you're simply here. When you're here, not lost in thought, not trapped in old beliefs, not racing to prove, to perform, to impress, to control, but just here. What do you notice? Maybe the silence isn't emptiness. Maybe stillness isn't weakness. Maybe letting go doesn't mean losing control. Maybe it means finding it. Because when you let go of the weight of expectation, when you stop holding your breath, when you stop bracing for impact, something happens. A shift. Because now, you're not just existing, you're alive. What does that mean? It means every moment is fresh, open, unwritten. It means you no longer have to be the person you thought you had to be. It means instead of running the same patterns, repeating the same cycles, you get to choose. With every choice, every breath, every step forward, you step into something new, freedom. So now, let's ask something else. What do you want to create? If you're no longer weighed down by old stories, if you no longer have to prove anything, if you're free to move, to feel, to live without hesitation, what would you do? What would you become? How much more could you enjoy this life? That you're finally free to live it?